Well, Steve White, Trek Boy 89 for Steve Arts 89. Well, before we got to Star Trek Las Vegas, the Roddenberry Archives dropped a bunch of documentaries. They did four that they dropped all at the same time, which are quite interesting. They did one, which was a conversation with Nicholas Meyer, one which was a conversation with Walter Koenig, one that was about the production, or, well, the non-production of Star Trek Phase 2, and the other one was about the Shatnerverse and where it could have gone. Now, I'm just going to go in the order that I watched them. The first one was the Nicholas Meyer interview, which is interesting. The most interesting part, because we've all heard him talk about, the creation of Star Trek 2 and how he came into it. But he was, I felt, a little bit more candid about how little he knew and how much of an attitude he had about doing it, because he'd always said that he's like, they said, what was it like to work with Gene Roddenberry? Was there issues? And he always said, no, it was fine. That was totally wrong. And he said, I actually was given a bunch of memos and letters of our correspondence at the time, which I didn't even remember any of it. It was really quite aggressive and contentious, and basically he said he hated my script, he hated the idea, he didn't like what I was doing, and I basically sassed him and did what I wanted anyway. And he sort of didn't remember it that way. So I really appreciate the fact that he was honest about how it actually went down after the fact. Now he saw the proof of it, and it was not how he remembered it. So that was interesting. And yeah, he didn't get Star Trek, and the only way he could really get it was to see it as like a naval story, like the Hornblower thing. Once he got the Hornblower thing, he's like, yeah, I can do Star Trek, which shows what I really felt. So he really didn't get Star Trek, and he sort of got it in the end, but he didn't really get it in the beginning, and he did Star Trek a lot of damage by making it into like this war story, like this naval war story, like submarine sort of warfare, and that's not what Star Trek was. Star Trek was not a war story, and just now every story has to have a villain out for vengeance, and every season has to have a big bad or a villain. Even Starfleet Academy apparently has a bad guy. I'm like, the first time I heard that, I'm like, why would Starfleet Academy have a villain? Your story is their students learning. That's enough story. You don't have to have some stupid, lame conflict in the background that has to be resolved with a big space battle at the end. It's just Jesus. So yeah, so that was interesting. And the conversations with Josh Takei. There was one with Josh Takei, which I also watched because I'd missed it. That was interesting as well. Like Walter Koenig, just going through his history with the show, with the productions. And the most interesting thing about, not that George's wasn't interesting, but Walter's, a few things kind of countered what we'd heard and what Nicholas Meyer said. So it's kind of interesting, and you sort of wonder whose memory is accurate. But the fact that Walter Koenig has written 2 books about his experience with Star Trek, the original series and the motion picture, and then with the later series of films, I feel like he's kind of already covered it. So his story is sort of documented. So I'm assuming he sort of could just look back at his own notes, basically. But yeah, it was interesting, just a few little points, his attitude about where Star Trek was, and the fact that he nearly wasn't in Star Trek 3 because he didn't feel like the character did anything, and how much he loved Star Trek 4 because he did, and how surprised he was that Shatner was a horrible actor to work with and a horrible person, but he was a great director. He was really nice, he was wonderful to the crew, and whether he was just being fake, I'm guessing he was being fake, because he was apparently it was to the point where Walter and that were avoiding him because you just had to talk to him, you were getting hugs and kisses and adoration and everything, and when they basically didn't even notice he didn't even notice they existed when they were just his acting, well, cast members, fellow cast members. So that was interesting. And what was the other thing? Oh, of course, the William Shatner talking about the Shatnerverse they were developing, and how J.J. Abrams just cancelled it all. Basically, they'd done a couple of stories based around Kirk being regenerated and having second life in the Next Generation era. I didn't read the books. I had them all. I actually have them all on ebook still. I had all the Star Trek books, and I sold my whole collection to someone because I had it all on ebook, and I'm like, I don't have the space. I do regret that, because I'd like to actually read some of those books in actual, book form. But yeah, they had a whole idea developed, but it was too much. One story was too much like Nemesis, and then another story was too much like what they were doing with what they were going to do with the JJ films. They were saying, look, we are just rebooting it, and we don't really want to continue this universe. They didn't get to finish the series really, but it's all still there. I think they could finish it off. They could do more, but unfortunately, Paramount basically decided to kill all the Star Trek fiction, the Star Trek extended universe, by basically saying it was all an alternative universe and none of it's real and it doesn't count. But the new Star Trek shows are what counts, not all these other shows that were done, in canon with the original Star Trek series and movies. I know books technically aren't canon, but the people writing them, adhered to canon and tried to make them fit around the TV shows and movies. And now they're saying, oh, that's all just one big alternative universe. And it's like, well, actually, no, yours is the alternative universe, so I'm still going to read them like they're in the same universe as the original Star Trek adventures. Because I think they do state in that Coda book, which I haven't read, that it is, there's someone basically saying, this is the real Prime Universe, this is the real universe, the Prime Universe is the real universe, and all those other adventures are other universe, when really it's around the other way. So the idea that they've separated them doesn't bother me on that level, because it sort of is like, well, of course, it's like Strange New Worlds is a different universe and different timeline from the original Star Trek, so it doesn't matter what they do in it. They've established it's a different timeline, and they've also sort of established in Discovery and Lower Decks it is a different universe as well. So it doesn't matter. But just the idea that they're trying to claim that theirs is the real one and the other one's the alternative universe, rather than just say, this is an alternative universe, we're doing a reboot, and the other universe still exists, you can have adventures there, you don't have to give that up just so we can do like our version. But they just don't seem to, the idea that you can have both. Like, even though they have these mirror universe stories running at the same time as their universe, they can't have the original Star Trek running at the same time. It doesn't make any sense. It's like some personal vendetta or something where they just want to kill Star Trek. It's like their Star Trek can't live if the original Star Trek does. Like, their Star Trek can't exist if the original Star Trek lives. It's like there's something just wrong there. So so they went into that. And the other documentary about Phase 2, I might do a whole video about talking about that, because I found that really interesting, and I'm already up to 7 minutes. So I'm going to go. Feel free to share, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think about these new documentaries. What I would really like to see from Omez, or whatever it's called, who are doing these and sort of doing the Roddenberry archives, is some more shorts, like Unification, because they've got the resources and they've got money for promotion and that. I think they should be doing these shorts, and they should be showing them on the website, along with, they've got all these, like, they've got like 17 3D ships and stuff like that at the moment, and all these sets and things. With all those resources, they could be doing just little vignettes, or whatever they're called, just little slices of, Federation life. Like, you can just have someone, traveling up to the Enterprise and taking their position on the bridge and looking around and, looking at the view screen and just being on the Enterprise. Just have these little moments, having people on Earth in Starfleet or whatever, whatever they sort of do a new ship or a new set, they should do a little short on it. And they could tell little stories, just little stories that you wouldn't get in Star Trek episodes or anything, just for the sake of it. But I think they've done one or two to sort of launch the idea of the Roddenberry archives, and I don't think they're really interested in doing anything more. And I think it's just a waste of resources, because we saw what they did. There's all these little weird little random clips, just a second here and there, of the actor made up as Spock and Yeoman Colt and everything. I'm like, they could have done so much more. Once they had the people there, they had the resources, they could have done more, and it would have been really interesting. Obviously, they can't do short films or movies or TV, but they could do little scenes and stuff like that to promote each sort of thing, which would be interesting. So but documentaries are good. Like, I found them to be really interesting, really high quality, really extensive. I find there was a lot of BS in a lot of the older Star Trek documentaries and specials and that. A lot of people saying the right thing and that. And now people, especially as they get a bit older, they just don't have the time to BS. And some people are just really being straightforward about things and their opinions of other actors and producers and writers and that on Star Trek. And it's sort of interesting. Like, we all know how Marina Sirtis came out when she thought she wasn't going to work on Star Trek ever again, so she told how horrible they were negotiating Nemesis with her and all this other stuff. and then she ended up being on Star Trek again. I'm like, oh, she's lucky. She's lucky she got that, because she was just bad mouthing them really bad. But I think that management was gone by the time they got to Picard season 3 anyway. But yes, the documentary is really interesting. I'm glad they're doing them. I want to see more, but I also want to see some shorts. I think they're just wasting those resources, and since that's the last real Star Trek, the last view of the real Star Trek that we have and will probably get, I'd like a little bit more than just regeneration and not regeneration, the unification video and that they did. But I'm going to go. It's more than 10 minutes. I didn't even get through all 4 documentaries.